Imagine this. Your body has breathed its last breath, and you feel yourself lifting out of flesh. The weight of gravity is gone, the pain of time dissolved. You are moving upward, drawn toward a tunnel of radiance so brilliant it fills you with awe. Voices call softly. Beings clothed in light beckon, and you are told you are safe, you are home, you are finally free. But as you draw closer, something feels strange. The light dazzles, but it blinds. The beings smile, but their eyes do not burn with truth. There is an emptiness beneath the glow, a hollowness behind the beauty. This is not the silence of eternity, but the clamor of imitation. And still, the pull is strong. You feel the tug of memory, of longing, of promises whispered in your lifetime. It feels divine, yet somehow it feels wrong. This is the chilling possibility the mystics warned about, that not all afterlife lights lead home. Some are prisons dressed in gold, some are illusions spun by powers that feed on your return. The occult teaching of the eighth sphere reveals a terrifying truth, that beyond death lies not only freedom, but also the counterfeit, and unless you discern, you may mistake one for the other. The eighth sphere, according to ancient warnings, is a dazzling trap, a false heaven built by the archons, the rulers of illusion. They cannot create true life, but they can counterfeit it. They weave radiant realms that mimic paradise, convincing souls they have reached salvation. And in this counterfeit heaven, the soul is persuaded to return, recycled again into the matrix of suffering, again into the forgetfulness of flesh. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what if the afterlife you've been promised is not the true home of your soul, but the Archon's final snare? How would you know the difference? How could you tell counterfeit light from eternal fullness? Would you follow the crowd of souls rushing into the tunnel, or would you stop and question, even at the threshold of death? The story of the eighth sphere is not told to terrify, but to awaken. For knowledge is protection, to know of the counterfeit is to prepare for truth. To discern the false heaven is to free your soul for the true ascent. This is why Gnostics, mystics, and occult teachers risked everything to whisper the warning. Not every light leads home. Think of it like this. The counterfeit is easy, obvious, dazzling, and demanding. The true realm of the pleroma is silent, subtle, still, and free. The archons lure you with spectacle. Sophia calls you with remembrance. The counterfeit feeds on your fear of judgment. The true fullness dissolves all fear. Do you see the difference? One binds, the other liberates. And so we begin our journey into the darkest and most dangerous mystery of the soul's path, the eighth sphere, the Archon's final trap. A realm that looks like heaven, feels like salvation, but is in truth the recycling plant of souls. To know this mystery is to arm yourself for the greatest journey of all, the journey beyond death. The phrase eighth sphere first surfaced in the whispers of esoteric orders, carried forward by Helena Blavatsky and occult teachers of the 19th century. They spoke of a realm beyond the 7 planetary spheres, a place not part of the divine ascent, but crafted as a counterfeit. It shone with brilliance, but it was not born of the pleroma. Instead, it was forged by the archons, rulers of shadow, as their masterpiece of deception. Blavatsky described it as a hollow sphere, dazzling on the outside, barren within. Souls who reached it believed they had ascended, but in truth, they were captured. Like insects drawn to a flame, they mistook the shimmer for salvation. And once inside, their essence was drained, their memories dissolved, and their spark sent back into the cycle of rebirth. It is not paradise. It is machinery disguised as paradise. The idea may sound chilling, even absurd, but pause and consider. Why do so many traditions describe 7 heavens, 7 steps, 7 gates? And why does the counterfeit always appear as an eighth, something added, something beyond, something too perfect? The occultists insisted this was no accident. The eighth sphere is the counterfeit crown, a false summit built to ensnare the unprepared soul. Think of it as a cosmic mirage. From a distance it glitters like water in the desert. The thirsty traveler runs toward it, convinced their journey is over, their suffering ended. But the closer they come, the drier their throat becomes, the more hollow the vision grows. And still, the illusion is so convincing that most souls fall willingly into its net. The Gnostics warned in their own language, the archons are not creators but imitators. They cannot invent light, so they steal its reflection. They cannot birth freedom, so they construct counterfeit heavens. The eighth sphere is the culmination of their mimicry, a radiant trap designed to fool even the awakened. And the danger lies not in its darkness, but in its beauty. Have you ever noticed how deception rarely comes clothed in ugliness? Lies arrive in robes of charm, in words of flattery, in promises too good to question. The eighth sphere is this principle amplified to cosmic scale. It is the perfect lie, a heaven that feels like home, until you realize it is the bars of a cage. So ask yourself, if you were met by radiant beings in the afterlife, offering you comfort, promising reunion, assuring you that you have finally made it, would you know if they were truly of the light, or would you surrender not realizing you had entered the Archon's final invention? This is why the teaching of the eighth sphere matters. It is not a curiosity of occult history. It is a warning, a map, a reminder that discernment must extend even beyond death. For if the counterfeit heaven exists, then salvation is not simply given. It is chosen, known, remembered. And only those who recognize the imitation can pass beyond it into the true fullness of the pleroma. The soul's journey was never meant to end in captivity. The blueprint, written long before distortion, speaks of ascent, of the spark returning through the heavens, past the rulers, and into the arms of the pleroma. The Gnostics described 7 steps of return, 7 veils to cross, 7 heavens where the soul must remember its origin. At each stage, the soul sheds illusion and grows lighter, until finally it passes beyond the reach of time. This is the true ascent, Sophia's design. Each heaven is not a test of obedience, but a mirror of remembrance. In silence, the soul recalls its forgotten home. In light, it reclaims its fractured wholeness. The ascent is not about judgment or punishment, but about awakening layer by layer until nothing false remains. The end is not a throne of power, but a return to fullness, the pleroma where all is whole, all is light, all is love. But the Archons saw this path and trembled, for if souls remembered their origin, their dominion would end. So they built an imitation. They fashioned the eighth sphere as a detour, a counterfeit crown just beyond the 7th heaven. It mimicked the true ascent, but cut the soul off from remembrance. It promised paradise, but delivered captivity. It was their last defense against Sophia's children returning home. Imagine a mountain path. The summit lies ahead, but just before you reach it, a side trail appears. Smooth, golden, inviting. The true path is narrow and silent, demanding endurance. The false path glitters with ease, offering comfort and brilliance. Which would you choose? Which would you trust? The Archons know most souls, weary from the long climb of life, will choose the shining detour. The true ascent asks for courage, to walk through silence, to trust the spark within, to face the Archons and refuse their lies. The counterfeit asks only for surrender, but surrender to deception. The true ascent strips away fear, the counterfeit feeds on it. The true ascent ends in fullness, the counterfeit in recycling. The difference is subtle yet eternal. This is why Sophia planted her spark inside you, so you would not be fooled. The divine essence within you knows the difference between imitation and truth. But in the moment of death, when light surrounds and illusions dazzle, will you hear that whisper? Will you trust the spark even against 1,000 voices beckoning you into the counterfeit? The mystics warned, do not be quick to trust every light. Test it, discern it, for the true light does not demand, it liberates. The true realm does not bind you with contracts of guilt, it dissolves all debts. The true fullness is not spectacle, but stillness. It does not glitter, it simply is. So the question is this: when the path divides, one dazzling, one silent, will you know which is Sophia's? Will you follow the glittering detour into the Archon's 8th sphere, or will you keep climbing toward the fullness that has no need to impress, only to embrace? The early Gnostics saw what most of the world could not. They looked past the glitter of temples, the authority of priests, the promises of empire, and they whispered, "This world is counterfeit." They wrote in texts buried for centuries that the rulers of this cosmos, the Archons, did not merely shape the material realm, but built illusions of heaven as well. Their warnings ring like thunder through the ages. Beware of false lights, beware of false thrones, beware of gods who demand worship. The Apocryphon of John describes the demiurge, blind and arrogant, declaring himself the only God. But the text pierces the lie. He is not the source, only a shadow. And if he is a shadow, then the heavens he rules are shadows too. The Gnostics knew that the journey of the soul would not only pass through physical death, but through a gauntlet of false rulers eager to claim the spark for themselves. The Pistis Sophia tells of Sophia crying out from the lower realms, surrounded by powers of deception, pleading for remembrance and rescue. Even she, an eon, was trapped in the counterfeit nets. How much more, then, would human souls be vulnerable if they walked unprepared? Her story is not just myth, it is map. It tells us that the Archons cloak themselves in borrowed light, pretending to be divine in order to ensnare the unwary. The hypostasis of the Archons warns of rulers who twist perception, who enslave humanity with lies, who place veils between the soul and its origin. Their strategy is always the same: control through fear, deception through imitation. Is it any wonder, then, that the afterlife they offer would also be a copy, dazzling yet hollow, radiant yet false? Ask yourself, how many images of heaven taught in this world resemble the counterfeit more than the fullness? Thrones, judgment, endless obedience, fear of punishment for failing divine law. These are not Sophia's gifts. These are the Archon's demands. The true Pleroma asks for no submission, no worship, no chains of guilt. It asks only remembrance. The Gnostics paid dearly for speaking these truths. Their writings were burned, their communities scattered, their voices silenced for nearly 2 millennia. Why? Because they unmasked the counterfeit. They exposed the Archon's illusions for what they were. They declared that even heaven could be false, and that the true God, the source beyond all, could not be contained in any throne or empire. And so the question echoes across centuries to us: will you heed their warnings? Will you assume that all light is true, that all heavens are home? Or will you dare to discern, to question, to prepare for the test that awaits beyond death? The Gnostics did not ask for blind faith. They asked for gnosis, direct knowing, unshakable remembrance, the wisdom that cannot be deceived. The warning stands: not every light leads home, not every heaven is the fullness. Between the counterfeit and the true lies a razor's edge of discernment. The question is, will you recognize the difference when it matters most? In recent decades, thousands of near-death experiences have been recorded, testimonies of people who crossed the threshold of death and returned. Many describe tunnels of light, radiant beings, and councils of guides. At first glance, these visions seem to confirm the afterlife promised by religions and mystics alike. But look closer, and patterns emerge that echo the warnings of the ancients. Not all who encounter the light return with peace. Some return unsettled, as if they had glimpsed a stage play rather than eternity. One recurring theme is the life review. Souls report being shown every moment of their lives, judged by themselves or by beings cloaked in compassion. Yet often this review leaves them burdened with guilt, convinced they must return to repair their karmic debts. Is this truly liberation, or is it a mechanism to recycle the soul? Does the eighth sphere shine here, hiding behind a cloak of judgment masquerading as love? Others speak of radiant beings who greet them but demand recognition, allegiance, or worship. Such encounters sound suspiciously like the archons described by the Gnostics. Powers who thrive on submission, who mimic divinity but lack the fragrance of true fullness. If light insists you bow, is it truly light? Or is it counterfeit, feeding on devotion rather than granting freedom? Some experiencers report feeling a strange resistance, as if they were being pulled into something they did not want. They describe the tunnel as magnetic, even coercive, dragging them into realms they did not choose. One soul said, "I knew if I stepped through, I would not come back the same." Another whispered, "The light was beautiful, but it wasn't home." These voices are rare, but they matter, for they echo the warnings of Sophia's watchers. The archons know how to weave illusions that feel familiar. They can project images of loved ones, resurrecting faces and voices to convince the soul it is safe. But if those reunions are scripted performances, then the trap is even more chilling. Paradise as a theater of shadows. The question must be asked: are the beings encountered in near-death experiences emissaries of the pleroma or actors of the eighth sphere? Of course, not all NDEs bear the mark of counterfeit. Some describe an indescribable silence, a peace beyond form, a presence that does not demand but dissolves. These accounts sound closer to the fullness. No judgment, no compulsion, no chain, only remembrance. The difference is subtle but profound. The counterfeit dazzles and directs. The true light simply is. So we are left with a haunting truth. Near-death visions may be windows into both realms, the true ascent and the counterfeit trap. The soul must discern, even at the threshold of eternity. The ancients warned, the mystics whispered, and now the experiences of ordinary people confirm. The afterlife is not simple. It is a labyrinth, and not every path leads home. So ask yourself, if you faced the tunnel of light tomorrow, how would you know? Would you follow unquestioningly, or would you pause and listen to the spark within? For the difference between liberation and recycling may be decided in that single moment of recognition. Imagine the soul leaving the body, raw with memory, tender with longing, fragile after its release from flesh. It is at this moment the eighth sphere shines brightest, like a moth lamp in the dark. The archons know the soul hungers for peace, for rest, for reunion, so they offer it, wrapped in dazzling illusion. But beneath the radiance lies machinery, a process as cold as it is efficient, the harvesting of divine essence. The soul is drawn into the sphere, not by chains, but by promises. Come into the light, the beings say. See your loved ones again, review your life, repent, return. And many souls obey, believing they are stepping into heaven. Yet once inside, something begins. The spark is siphoned. The essence of Sophia planted within is drained like nectar, its fire sustaining the counterfeit cosmos. The soul is not annihilated, but emptied, prepared to be sent back into flesh. The cycle continues with a cruel rhythm. Souls return to Earth with memories wiped, carrying only faint echoes of what they once knew. They are convinced the suffering they endure is for growth or karma, when in truth it is the Archon's farm, a recycling loop that keeps their false system alive. The eighth sphere is not heaven. It is a soul factory, feeding on the sparks of Sophia to prolong its counterfeit design. This is why life on Earth feels like repetition. Wars repeat, empires rise and fall, suffering recycles itself through generations. The Archon's machine resets the stage over and over, feeding on the energy of souls who never escape. History is not just coincidence, it is the echo of captivity. The eighth sphere is the hidden wheel turning behind it all. Ask yourself, how much of your suffering feels chosen by you and how much feels imposed? How many times have you felt déjà vu, as if you had walked this path before, lived this struggle already? Perhaps you have. Perhaps you have been cycled through the same illusions, over and over, until the counterfeit believes itself eternal. But the truth is, the counterfeit cannot last forever. The eighth sphere may recycle, but it cannot truly create. It feeds like a parasite, and parasites eventually consume their hosts. The Archons fear the moment when humanity awakens, when souls refuse the recycling, when Sophia's spark rises beyond their reach. That moment unravels their entire machinery. The stern warning is this: you must prepare now. Discernment in life becomes discernment in death. If you learn to spot illusions here, you will recognize them there. If you refuse fear now, you will refuse it at the threshold. If you strengthen the spark within, it will burn bright enough to guide you past the false lights and into the fullness. So the question stands: when the light comes and promises paradise, will you rush in, or will you pause, test, and listen to the whisper of Sophia within? For that pause may be the difference between being recycled once more and finally ascending beyond the counterfeit wheel. The greatest danger of the eighth sphere is not its darkness, it is its brilliance. The trap is not ugly but beautiful, not terrifying but comforting. The Archons do not approach with chains, they approach with promises, and so the soul, weary from its earthly trial, steps willingly into captivity. But the counterfeit always leaves clues. If you know what to look for, you can discern the false from the true. One sign is demand. The beings of the eighth sphere ask for worship, for allegiance, for obedience. They may cloak their requests in love, but beneath the surface is compulsion. Bow before us. Confess your sins. Repay your karmic debt. These are not the words of the pleroma. The fullness does not demand, it simply embraces. If the light insists you earn your entry, you have met the counterfeit. Another sign is judgment. Many souls in near-death visions report being confronted by a review of their lives, each moment replayed in painful detail. They are told they failed, that they must return to make amends, that they owe the system another round. But Sophia's blueprint does not bind you to guilt. True remembrance dissolves fear, shame, and debt. The counterfeit thrives on it, for guilt is the leash by which the Archons lead souls back into matter. Beware also of contracts. Some testimonies speak of souls being asked to agree to return, to sign unseen pacts, to accept lessons or missions. This is the machinery of the eighth sphere, legalistic, transactional, always binding the spark with obligations. The pleroma knows no contracts, no coercion. True freedom has no paperwork. The counterfeit often arrives as spectacle, dazzling tunnels of light, radiant palaces, shining thrones. But the true fullness is not theatre, it is silence, stillness, peace beyond description. The Gnostics knew this. The pleroma does not glitter because it does not need to. Its light is gentle, its embrace unassuming, its power quiet. If the light blinds instead of soothes, you are not yet home. Another marker is forgetfulness. The archons insist you must forget before you return. They veil your memory, strip away remembrance, and cast you back into flesh blind and broken. The true path restores memory. In the fullness you awaken, not forget. If the beings who greet you prepare to erase your mind, they are jailers, not saviors. And then there is fear. Even in their cloaks of light, the archons reek of it. If you look deeply, their promises are rooted in threats: obey or be punished, return or lose your chance, submit or suffer. The true pleroma contains no fear. It does not threaten, it only remembers. So ask yourself, if you stand at the threshold of death and are met by brilliant beings, will you notice their tone? Will you recognize whether they demand or embrace, whether they bind or liberate, whether they blind or reveal? The difference may be subtle, but it is everything. The spark within you knows the truth. If you listen to it, you will not be deceived. If you trust it, you will pass by the counterfeit light. For the soul that remembers cannot be recycled. The archons may dazzle the eyes, but they cannot deceive the spark that refuses to bow. Picture the moment. You have left your body, and before you stretches a corridor of dazzling light. Beings clothed in brilliance beckon you forward, their voices sweet as honey. They speak of peace, reunion, and reward. All you must do is step through. Everything in you aches for rest, for release, for the promise of home. And yet, deep within, the spark whispers, wait, something is not right. To refuse such light takes a courage few imagine. How many souls, weary and longing, rush into the brilliance without question? To stand still when all beckons you forward feels like madness. To say no to angels dressed in radiance feels like rebellion. And yet, refusal may be the only doorway to freedom. For the counterfeit thrives on haste, while truth waits in silence. The mystics knew this. They taught that discernment is sharper than devotion, that silence is safer than spectacle. Better to pause at the threshold than to walk blindly into captivity. The soul who dares to refuse does not fall, it remembers. It slips past the net of illusions, stepping sideways into the stillness the archons cannot imitate. Imagine a soul who halts at the brink. The beings grow impatient, their smiles falter, their light flickers. They demand obedience, plead with urgency, even threaten with judgment. And in that moment the truth is revealed. For love never demands, never coerces, never binds. Only the counterfeit grows angry when questioned. Only the false light grows darker when refused. The courage to refuse is the courage to trust the spark within more than the spectacle before your eyes. It is the same courage Sophia carried when she planted her essence in matter, knowing the risk. It is the courage of Gnostics who refused the empires of their day, even when it cost them their lives. And it is the courage your soul must carry at the edge of eternity. This refusal is not despair nor denial. It is faith in remembrance. It is the soul saying, I will not bow to light that blinds. I will walk into silence that heals. It is not a step backward, but a step deeper, into the pleroma's embrace, where stillness dissolves illusion and the spark expands without limit. Ask yourself, would you have the strength to say no? Would you trust the whisper over the spectacle, the silence over the choir, the spark over the throne? It is easy to answer now, but in that moment the test will be fierce. That is why you must prepare here, so that when the light comes, you recognize the difference. The archons fear refusal more than anything. For a soul that refuses cannot be recycled. A soul that remembers cannot be trapped. And if enough souls find the courage to resist the counterfeit, the machinery of the eighth sphere will collapse, and the stolen sparks will blaze free once more. The threshold of death is not the place to begin discernment. By then, the illusions will be overwhelming and the test too sudden. Preparation begins here, in life, in every choice you make while wearing flesh. How you live now shapes how you will see then. The eyes of the soul must be trained to distinguish truth from counterfeit long before the final moment arrives. Think of this world as rehearsal. Every illusion you face here, false promises, seductive lies, glittering distractions, is practice for the greater deception that waits beyond. If you can learn to recognize the Archon's tactics in daily life, you will recognize them in death. If you see through their false lights here, you will not be blinded by them there. The counterfeit is consistent. It only changes costume. Begin with silence. The Archons thrive on noise, distraction, endless chatter of mind and media. Sophia's spark speaks in stillness. When you learn to trust silence now, you are tuning your ear to the true frequency of the pleroma. When the counterfeit dazzles, silence will remind you, truth does not shout, it simply is. Next, practice refusing fear. The counterfeit thrives on guilt and dread, convincing you that you are unworthy unless you obey. But Sophia's blueprint dissolves fear in remembrance. When you face fear in this life and refuse to bow, you are preparing for the afterlife. You are strengthening your spark to recognize coercion, even when it wears the mask of light. Align with the spark daily. Through prayer, meditation, breath, or simple awareness, remind yourself of the divine seed within. Feed it with truth, with beauty, with compassion. Each time you choose the spark over the system, you weaken the hold of the counterfeit. Each time you remember who you are, you loosen the Archon's grip over your destiny. Do not mistake the purpose of life. It is not to accumulate wealth, power, or even comfort. It is to awaken, to train, to remember. This world is the classroom where you prepare for the greater test beyond. And only those who awaken here will see clearly there. Those who sleep through life will sleep into death, and sleepers are the Archon's easiest prey. Ask yourself daily, am I living by Sophia's blueprint or the counterfeit one? Am I following silence and freedom or spectacle and fear? Each honest answer is training. Each act of remembrance is preparation. Each refusal to submit to illusion here strengthens your refusal to illusion there. The courage to face the eighth sphere begins in the smallest choices of life, choosing truth when lies are easier, choosing compassion when cruelty is convenient, choosing silence when noise tempts. These are not minor acts, they are rehearsals for eternity. And so, live now as if you are already at the threshold. Live awake, live discerning, live remembering. For the Archons can only recycle the soul that forgets. The soul that practices gnosis in life carries its torch into death, and no counterfeit light can extinguish it. At the end of all journeys, the soul will face a threshold. A light will shine, voices will call, promises will pour like honey into your ears. In that moment, all the teachings, all the whispers of Sophia, all the choices of your life will gather into one question. Whose heaven are you entering? Will it be the counterfeit heaven of the eighth sphere, dazzling, commanding, hollow, where souls are recycled to feed a machine that was never divine? Or will it be the true fullness of the pleroma, silent, still, free, where Sophia's spark dissolves into the embrace of eternity? The difference is subtle, but eternal. One enslaves, the other liberates. One recycles, the other restores. The Archons will make their trap shine like gold. They will promise reunion, demand allegiance, insist you must bow. But the pleroma waits quietly, asking for nothing, demanding nothing. Its only voice is remembrance. The choice, then, is not between light and dark, but between imitation and truth, and that choice rests with you. Do not wait for death to decide. Decide now. Live as one aligned with Sophia's blueprint. Strengthen your spark with silence, courage, and remembrance. Refuse the lies here, so you will refuse them there. See through the counterfeit in this life, so the eighth sphere will have no hold on you in the next. For the archons cannot capture a soul that remembers. They cannot recycle a flame that refuses to bow. They cannot bind a spark that has become a fire. That fire lives in you. That remembrance belongs to you. The question is not if Sophia planted her spark. She did. The question is, will you live it? And now I ask you directly, when the light comes for you, will you know? When radiant beings call you home, will you discern their tone? Will you pause, listen to the spark within and choose the true? Or will you rush into the glittering trap, mistaking imitation for eternity? The answer is yours to prepare, yours to live, yours to embody. For heaven is not simply what awaits you, it is what you choose to remember, and only remembrance will guide you home. If this message has stirred something in you, if you feel the call of Sophia and the yearning for remembrance, I invite you to go deeper. In my Gnostic spiritual fantasy novels, I weave these hidden truths into stories that awaken the soul and ignite the spark within. You'll find the link in the description below. Until then, remember, not every light is true, not every heaven is home. The eighth sphere waits with brilliance, but Sophia's fullness waits with silence. Choose wisely. Choose remembrance. Choose freedom.